Can we go a little bit into that? Can you explain to the audience, how you see this playing out and how you'd like to help it?
Yeah, so I wrote about this in letter 31, which we were discussing. I can't remember if it was on air or off air, but like just before we started, I think. And it is basically in terms of sort of how do we onboard millions, billions of people? How do we get from where we are now, a relatively niche part of the world? There's growing awareness of crypto in general, but it's still not got what anyone would consider mainstream adoption, I think. How do we get from there or from here to sort of where everyone is interacting with blockchain technology and using it in their day-to-day lives, similarly to how someone might be able to use an iPad and interact with like mobile technology, cloud computing, the internet, all of these things. And I think there's three main ways we get there. First is education, and that is something that is going to happen in parallel to these. All happen in parallel to each other. These are not like ABC. It's not a step. It's like just three pillars, as you said, to work on. Education is important in every area in life, and when it comes to new technology, we need to educate people on how to use the technology, how to use it safely. We need to improve educating ourselves and learning about how best to use it. And this is something that is going to continue for many, many, many years. Eventually, it will become extraordinarily niche and only at the cutting edge areas of the technology. For instance, today, very few people need to be educated on how to use the internet or how to use email. And if they do, it's very easy to get them to set up an email account and use it. Whereas way back in the day, it was a lot more complicated and tricky and unsafe. So this comes to sort of the second pillar, which is infrastructure. And today, it's very difficult to set up a MetaMask wallet or even a hardware wallet, and it's difficult to comprehend and understand what you're doing when you're interacting with the blockchain. There's transactions with long strings of letters and numbers. It's confusing. If you send it to the wrong address, it's permanent. You lose all your money. You click on the wrong link, your wallet can get drained. There's a lot of scams and dangers. It's very unforgiving. It's very confusing and convoluted. So we need better infrastructure to basically abstract away the technology and make it really seamless and easy to interact with. Again, similar to how it happened with the internet and email. If we go back, um, I was born in the late '80s, started interacting with the internet in the early '90s. It was, you had to use a modem to connect. You couldn't be on the phone at the same time. You had to sometimes, if there was a problem, troubleshooting was very difficult. It was very complicated. Setting up an email account, like there wasn't really good search engines. It was you had to know someone that told you go to this website. It was all complicated and difficult,
Ask
but now it's
Jeeves.
very, very easy. Ask Jeeves, Alta Vista, all the good old ones. Yeah. uh, so education and infrastructure are two things, and they're both happening right now. Education is improving every single day. Lots of people are working on lots of incredible resources. Infrastructure is improving every single day. Lots of people are working on better wallets, easier wallets, different safety guards and safety nets to make it less likely for people to scam and to have guardrails and all that kind of stuff. And the UI UX is improving leaps and bounds. It's still terrible, but it used to be way worse. The last thing is, I think, a mentality shift, and that is the sort of realization that the people that have found their way to Web3 up until now are largely, I mean, they're the early adopters, they're the pioneers and the innovators. And it largely consists of people who are tech minded and or finance minded. Prior to NFTs brought a lot more mainstream adoption, but still, most of the people here have some interest in the technology or the finance side of it to make money and trade. And the reality is that most of the world doesn't have anywhere near of as large of an interest in these things as we do. And I think for the better part of 2021 and a good chunk of 2022, and certainly still today, but to a lesser extent, people in the space tend to market the space to those outside the space about, hey, you can make so much money, you can get rich quick. There's play to earn games, there's learn to earn, there's walk to earn, there's everything to earn, which sounds good to some people and certainly the people that are in the space. But the reality is there's a lot of people out there that don't want to financialize and commercialize every aspect of their lives, and it's certainly a danger. And so I think we need to shift the mentality instead of like trying to lure people in or convince them or do anything like that by talking about how much money you can make. People don't often talk about how much money you can lose. It's just kind of take the money out of the equation and think about maybe the real world use cases of how this technology can just make our life easier, maybe more seamless, maybe faster transactions, and maybe there's money in a way where there's no downside, there's no risk. So we take the speculation and the financial, the gambling out of it, from like coins and tokens and things like that. And you think about, well, maybe it can save you money by eliminating the fees for middlemen. And things like Ticketmaster is a great example. Everyone hates how when you buy tickets to an event, you pay 19.95 Ticketmaster fee, and then 7.95 website fee, and then 4.95, because we're called Ticketmaster fee. It's like there's fees on top of fees on top of fees, and all these terms and conditions, and it's very not good for the end consumer. It's not even good for the event provider, because then they get a lot of their customers are unhappy because there's all scalpers. And anyway, blockchain technology can solve and improve that process, and it's hard to imagine people being unhappy about it. But we need to get to a point where it's easy, it's seamless, the infrastructure is there. Another great example is escrow for houses. If you're trying to buy a house and you put money in escrow, you often have to spend a few $1,000s just to ensure that this money is safe for both parties, maybe 5 figures if it's a large transaction. That can be solved by a smart contract, but it has to get to a point where people trust smart contracts. And again, if you go back to the early days of the internet, people did not trust putting their credit card on the internet because they didn't understand it. They didn't, and there were a lot of scams. The parallels keep piling up, but we'll get to a point where people trust smart contracts just the way people trust putting their credit card on the internet, and it's going to save people money. And yeah, it's just a mentality shift, and we've got to think about the real world use cases and eliminate all the speculation, or a lot of the speculation. And yeah, education, infrastructure, and mentality shift, and real world use cases is the 3 to 4 pillars.